Besides many customer meetings, we are also continuing with our logistics people community talks today. You can find the schedule on the two screens, but also in the DVZ Daily News. So feel free to also join at 2 and 4 p.m. Yeah, so our first guest today is Heinrich Kerstgens. Welcome. Hein is the corporate representative and director of board projects and will guide us through the topic of the new Silk Road. Yeah, the stage is yours, Hein.
Thank you very much. Our title of the thing is the new Silk Road necessary or is it not? And so I want to show you something. So we start with our picture here. You see how the ancient Silk Road was working with the camels, and that was the goods we were carrying in former times. And now it's more modern, and we do it with container trains, with modern port facilities and everything we need to do a proper way of transport as we do it today. So everything comes from the camel, and now we do it on the whole way with rail, with trucks, with port facilities. So the whole question is, do we need that, or is necessary, not necessary enough because we all have the sea-going vessels and everything is fine, and we don't need all this rubbish because it's such a long way with the rail, and there are so many constraints and bottlenecks and everything. And so I want to show you a little bit about that. When we look at the historic flows, we see here the old Silk Road. It was a little bit more south than today, but today the new Iron Silk Road, we have different corridors. And I want to talk to you about the Northern Corridor, which is the corridor between China and also via Kazakhstan, via the Russian Federation, via Belarus and Poland to Central Europe. Mainly, one tells us that the new Silk Road is going from China to Duisburg, because that was the first trains which were happening. Today, it's going everywhere in Germany, and there are so many endpoints, but still the most trains are still ending in Duisburg. And when we look at the figures, in 2021, there was the maximum we had on the new Northern Corridor, which was 1.5 million TEU. Now it's because of the new geopolitical situation with the war in Ukraine, it's less. But depending on how the situation will change, things may gain again. The other corridor we can talk about is the Southern Corridor, which is the normal way we know from the seagoing vessels. And when we look at the figures, we see, okay, that's much, much more. In 2022, it was 22 million TEU, so that's much, much more than we do on the rail on the Northern Corridor. And the new thing everyone is talking now about is the so-called Middle Corridor. And as you can see already on the screen, it's a little bit more complex, and it's not so easy to go because we have to cross at least the Caspian Sea with ferries or coasters, and we have to cross very often also the Black Sea from the country of Georgia to Romania or to Bulgaria. There is also a rail connection going from Georgia via Turkey to Bulgaria, but this rail connection is, as many other things on the Middle Corridor, not in the shape to bear many, many TEUs today as we want that. So the capacity is not there, and there are many, many bottlenecks when we look at that. It starts that we have to have a transshipment from wagons, because in China we have got the normal European track size, and the gauge in Kazakhstan is bigger, or in Russia is bigger, and so we have to change the trains. And then when we come to the Caspian Sea, we have to go either with the rail cars on the ferry, or we have to reload the containers on normal coasters and bring them over to Azerbaijan. And so we have another bottlenecks there, because the capacities of these ports regarding containers are not in the capacity we really need that today. So there is a lot of investment needed, and we are also dealing with that, talking to all the people there, working there, and it's a very positive action everywhere, but it needs some years to really make that. So we need to act on the western side of the Caspian Sea, but also we need to act on the eastern side of the Caspian Sea. So when we go further through Azerbaijan and Georgia, there are some transshipment ports needed. And also when I want to go to Turkey by rail, there is another change of the gorge, again from the White Gorge to the normal European gorge in Turkey. So that has to be done in Georgia as well. And the capacities of these terminals, they are not sufficient enough as today, but there will be investments in future. The same will happen in the ports in Georgia. So in Poti, Batumi, they are investing, and there is now just a tender out from the Georgian government to build a totally new seaport in Anaklia. So that will be sufficient capacity then there in the latest 5 years' time. So there's a lot of work to do, and when we look at the volumes of the middle corridor we have today, it's only really nothing. It's between 50 and 70,000 TEU. That was due to the big pressure now of the change of the geopolitical situation. This came to that. Before it was only 20,000 TEU, but we are sure that in the future, when all the investments were done in the infrastructures, then that will be much more, and I show you later how much we think it would be. And another important thing, apart from setting up ports, apart from setting up transshipment terminals, it's also important that we have enough ships on the Caspian Sea, because the Caspian Sea is inside, and there's the Volga-Don Canal, but the Volga-Don Canal is not very big, and so the size of the ships you can use is limited. So there is now a discussion about that we build together with others enough ships directly at the Caspian Sea so that they are more optimized and that it will be more efficient. In the end, there are at least 20 ships needed to be built. Maybe it should be more. When we look to the goods, what happens there in this whole area, it's not only the transport between China and Central Europe we have to look at. It's also the whole area in Central Asia and South Caucasus. There are people living. That's a market for export and import for the European countries, and it's 90 million people demanding, and there are a lot of countries with growing GDP now, and so through the opening of these countries, there will be a lot of business in future coming. Just in between, not only between China and Europe, but also in between these CIS states and between Europe and the CIS. Also, we have got now the strategy of the EU, very new, with Global Gateway strategy, that we want to have diversion of sourcing of our rare earths and other things. So that won't be the fact that we stop everything with China, that we stop everything on the long term with Russia, but it will be new delivery countries for us. That will be Uzbekistan, that will be Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and all of this. And so there will be a new flow of goods created. Another very, very important point from that, which is normal business, I would say, is that there is the change of the energy system everywhere in the world. And in these countries, we can produce a lot of green power by wind, green power by photovoltaics. And this green power will be transferred into hydrogen, will be transferred into ammonia and things like that, and that will be exported. And these are huge, huge volumes, and these volumes also have to be transported in a reliable, good way, and will give extra capacity need on these corridors, northern corridor, middle corridor, and all of this. And then these countries also have growing industries, car industry in Uzbekistan, textiles, for instance, agricultural things, as I mentioned already, raw materials, and all of this has to be transported. And so we expect there will be a huge market, huger market in the future than we had it in the past. And when we look at the good structure today, the rate of containerization is much below 10%. And this 10% will grow in the future. In Western Europe or in China, we are between 60 and 70% containerization, and we expect that in the next 10 years that will be doubled, so at least 20 to 25% containerization rate, which means there's a lot of demand in containers, a lot of demand in platforms and everything needed there. And so when we look at the volume out forecast for 2030, 2035, depending on the geopolitical situation, so it's very hard to have a good prediction, but most people I talk to, all our own investigations come to the fact that we can see again on the northern corridor something between 3 and 5 million TU. And just normally on these normal sea carrier corridors, so the southern corridor, that will be roughly between 27 and 30 million TU. But on the middle corridor, as you can see, it will be at least 1 million, and depending on how the energy transition will work, it will be up to 1.5 million TU in 2030, latest 2035. And for that, all the infrastructure investments have to be done. So that's a quick way on a very complicated theme. If everyone wants to have more detailed views in that, just come to me. I can tell you about between 3.5 and 4 hours from on now about everything you want to have about the different corridors and the new Silk Roads and how everything comes together. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for hearing me, and it was a pleasure. Thank you.